But Liam Cohen's offense, assuming he's a wide receiver first, which apparently he is, there is a ton of motion. There's a ton of formations. He's got to learn all that. He may be that special guy that we've never seen before. I'm not going to sit here and say he can't do it. He can't sit in two meetings at the same time.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday, which usually means, and today is one of those days, that we have the NFL Films legend, Greg Cosell, does big numbers on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, and he should, because he's so good. And these divisional previews, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you can go back and watch these on YouTube or listen to them on whatever podcast app you use. They are fantastic, and they what's the expression people usually say? They still hold up all through training camp almost, unless there's an injury or a big signing or whatever. Just great to get Greg's perspective on all this stuff. You can check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. I, of course, am at Ross Tucker NFL, the former offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Like I like to say, most of you are regulars, loyal, you know that, but we always get some new listeners or maybe some new AFC South fans that want to watch on YouTube, which is great. I love it. Please rate and review the show. If it's your first time or it's your 500th time, rate and review the show. Please make sure you subscribe to the feed, whether it's audio or YouTube, and turn the notifications on. Greg Cosell is presented by Liquid Death. No joke, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, I thought it was an energy drink. Now it's my favorite water and iced tea. Other than that, it's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, Greg, 5 down, 3 to go. Here we are. 4th of July is behind us, which, man, as an NFL player, 4th of July was the worst because you knew training camp was a couple weeks away and that the worst part of the year was coming up, although it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. I get a chance to talk with a bunch of guys. There's still guys out there that, played way back, and they'll say, man, these guys have no idea what it's like compared to what it used to be like. For the better, by the way, in terms of player health and safety and all those things. But we'll get to the NFC West next week, AFC West the week after that. But this week, Greg, AFC South, and, I usually just go alphabetical order, so we'll do that. Let's start with the Houston Texans. They kind of had a weird year. When we talked about the NFC North, you referenced C.J. Stroud, Greg, when you were talking about Jordan Love in terms of having an up and down second year as a starter when people have more tape on you and have a better idea of how they want to try to defend you. What did you see from Stroud? I think it did not feel like he played nearly as well as he did as a rookie.
And he didn't. And I think it was a really good learning year. And don't forget, he came out of Ohio State. He rarely ever faced real pressure on any kind of consistent basis. First year in the league, was wonderful for him. He did not face a lot of pressure at all. Last year, his second year in the league, the O-line did not play as well, and there were more bodies around him. And he started to speed up his game a little bit. He started to play a little too fast. He probably wasn't used to having to make throws with a lot of people around him and having quicker pressure. And he just wasn't quite as consistently accurate. His first year in the league, his ball placement was pristine. Last year, he would rush himself a little bit. At times he would sort of perceive pressure that by NFL standards wasn't quite really pressure. So it's a learning year. Now, he didn't play poorly, and obviously they made it to the second round of the playoffs, and he's really gifted, and he's a smart kid, so I think he'll figure this out. But it was just a learning curve for him. This is what happens. This is the NFL. Teams start to do different things. Even though quarterbacks, Ross, and this is an important point, can come into the league and play well early, and we see that a lot, the learning curve is still there. There's so much they have to learn about protections, about defenses. So, at times defenses just show them things that are a little bit different, and it becomes a little bit of a struggle at times.
Well, first of all, I watched a lot of Texans. I called several of their games. Extremely disappointed in their offensive line.
Bad year.
Because it's what's weird is the year before they had a bunch of injuries, but they kind of patched it together and played okay. This past year, they were healthy. They just played bad.
And even Laramie
there's
Tunsil,
no way they should have been that bad up front.
Yeah, and I don't think even Laramie Tunsil played, to his best at all last year.
Well, and that's a whole other discussion, Greg, because no matter how talented he is, I think he had 16 penalties, maybe more than that. I sit there and I think there's got to be some analytics departments, Greg, that can tell you how much of a detriment that is to the team. Penalty. You're costing at least 5 yards. I know that if it's a penalty, the down doesn't count, but it's still like you're giving up a sack. You know how good you have to be for them to keep you out there, or how much you're making for them to keep you out there if you have that many penalties? It's wild.
You know this, Ross. You probably heard it 1,000 times when you played, because I've been to many training camps. Pre-snap penalties by the offense just really get coaches pissed off.
Well, yeah, because that's just mental.
Yeah.
They can live with if you get beat or physical stuff, but it's the mental stuff that is we were told unacceptable, and I still believe
it's unacceptable. You're
unacceptable.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So they've made some change, and in fairness too, Greg, their receivers all got banged up.
Yes.
Diggs got hurt, was done. Nico Collins in and out. Time. They lose Tank Dell. That had an impact on Stroud too.
Yes. He probably didn't feel as comfortable turning it loose, with the confidence, but Nico Collins needs to be mentioned. I think Nico Collins has turned into one of the really top receivers in this league. He's long, he's athletic, he can run, he's a vertical threat, he's an intermediate threat, he's really good run after catch. He's become, again, I don't make lists, I don't sit here. I think we all accept that Chase and Jefferson are in the top two. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that makes Collins 3, 4, 5, but he's really become a big-time receiver.
So if you look, man, they added a lot of people.
I love Jaden Higgins, who they drafted
Cam Robinson, Ed Ingram, Trent Brown. They took Ursary out of Minnesota in the second round. How about Jaden Higgins at receiver, Jalen Noel at receiver? They added a lot of people on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, Greg, I don't think they are elite.
Yes.
At edge rusher and corner.
Yeah.
Elite. At the two most important positions. Let me ask something. Gardner Johnson, adding him. Just your thoughts on him as a player, and it's so unique that the Eagles moved on from him.
Yeah, he's a very good player. I think Gardner Johnson, and I hate to use this word, but I think he's one of those players that just is super instinctive. I think he's probably not a player, and I do know this as a fact, that he doesn't crave information. Like, he's not one of those guys that just, hey, give me a lot of stuff so I know everything. He just sees it and feels it and plays, and he's really good. But you mentioned corner. We all know about Stingley, but I thought Kamari Lassiter as a rookie, and you did some games, I thought that guy was outstanding on tape. Not only as a cover man, but he's got a physical nature and competitive toughness to him that is definitely contagious. This guy tackles, he's physical. I loved watching him.
Yeah, they hit a home run there. That was one where they benefited greatly from him running the bad 40 time.
Yep.
Greatly.
And I'll tell you another guy who's played really well for them as a starter, and I was wrong about him because I didn't think he'd be able to do it, was Henry To'oTo'o. He's become a really solid player. Maybe not a superstar, but he's a really solid linebacker, and he doesn't come off the field very often. So, I didn't think he could be that guy based on his Alabama tape, but it turned out to be wrong. He's become a really solid player.
It's funny because I can't remember if they were talking about Lassiter ran a bad 40, but then they said, well, they were watching him at Georgia. They didn't really see people running by him. And then at the Senior Bowl or whatever, and then in training camp, he's going against Nico Collins, Tank Dell. They're still not running by him, and they're like, okay, maybe he can just do it,
And by the way, they've got a boatload of great depth on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you start looking at their roster. I mean, you see the guys that are not going to start more than likely. I mean, this is an elite defense.
Danico Autry, Mario Edwards Jr., E.J. Speed at linebacker.
E.J. Speed started every game for Indianapolis and had a ton of tackles. And right now, he may not even start for them.
That's right. All right, let's get to the Colts. Speaking of that, we didn't, I don't know if we talked about this, Greg, but Anthony Richardson wasn't really throwing at Colts minicamp. They shut him down. He's got a shoulder issue. This does not sound good. I mean, when you're in the spring, Greg, and they have to shut you down with their shoulder, he needs every rep he can get to begin with.
Yeah, Daniel Jones will be the starter for them. And it'll be really interesting because they can run the ball. I mean, I don't know how many people were aware of what Jonathan Taylor did over the last 8 or 9 games last year. I don't know if you got a chance to do them in that stretch, Ross. He's a terrific back, and their O-line is really solid. It's, and they're really good at running the football. So, and you know what? They've got good skill players too. So this is really going to be interesting because Jones will end up being the starter. This is a really good opportunity for him because Jones needs a good O-line. He did not have one with the Giants because the one thing, there's a difference between what I'm about to say. Jones is athletic as far as running out of the pocket. But one thing Jones has never done well, and I think it's really hurt him, is he's not very good at movement within the pocket. And those are two different things. And I think that's one thing that's hurt him. He's a little stiff when he moves within the pocket. But he's straight line fast, so if he gets out of the pocket, he can run. But moving within the pocket, I'm talking about climbing or sliding 1 or 2 steps right or to the left. That kind of movement, he's not really good at that. So he needs a good offensive line so he's secure, and he obviously did not have that with the Giants.
He's not Anthony Richardson, but with their O-line and their running game, Daniel Jones is fast. Like he's Shane Steichen's going to make that running game even better.
Yep.
I think with him.
Yep, I agree.
Defensively, Greg, they still have some high-end players. DeForest Buckner, Zaire Franklin. I think the back end, there's some concerns. And then I'm curious to see what they get out of Latu in year 2. The first defensive player taken in the draft out of UCLA last year.
Yeah, player I really liked, Ross. The one thing that he needed to become better at, and we'll see if it continues, is just a little more power to his game. But I thought of all the pass rushers that came out in 2024, that he had the most tools in his toolbox. He understood how to rush the quarterback, but he needs to become a little more powerful. They did it. You mentioned the secondary. They did address it with Travarius Ward and Cam Bynum, a very solid player who they got from Minnesota, who was very good in Brian Flores' system. So we'll see. So they did address that. You mentioned Zaire Franklin. He's one of those guys that every year seems to lead the league in tackles, and he never comes off the field.
They also brought in Lou Anarumo as the D coordinator, Greg. Lou did a terrific job in Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden last year it was his fault after they've been letting all their safeties go and everybody else. But I don't think he forgot how to coach in 1 year.
No, and just to make a quick point is what Cincinnati did is they drafted so many players on the back end, and then you got to play the guys you draft, and some of them weren't quite ready to play. So when you can't play on the back end, that really changes how you have to play up front.
No question. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what Anarumo can do. Shout out to Kenny Moore, by the way. I love watching that guy play. There's certain nickelbacks, Greg, I just love.
And that's become such an important position in the NFL. I was talking to a coach about it, because that nickel is so important based on your defensive fronts, okay? Let me just make one point without going too deep in the weeds. Depending on how you line your defensive front, your nickel can have a B gap responsibility in the run game. Think about that. That means he's in a sense a inside the box defender in the run game. So your nickel is a really important player in today's NFL.
Listen, when the Eagles inserted Cooper DeJean in at nickelback, he changed the defense.
Without question. Great point.
He really changed the defense. I mean,
Yep.
he's a heck of a player, and he changed things. All right, let's get to the Jaguars, because this is a fascinating team. Obviously, they cleaned house, so you got Liam Cohen, the head coach. He'll be calling the offense, and they draft a guy like Travis Hunter. They'd already gotten De'Ami Brown. Brian Thomas was lights out at the end of last year. The question is, I think we're really going to figure something out here about Trevor Lawrence. You were kind of ahead of this last year, Greg, where I think it was last year when we were doing these previews, you still said, yeah, I don't know about Trevor. Like, he's good, but he's not – I don't know that he's quite become what people thought he was going to be.
And I think that's fair up to this point. He's shown flashes, but I don't think anybody would say, Ross, at this point he's a top 6 or 7 quarterback in the league. So
he's not top 10.
No. So, I mean, I think, with Liam Cohen, the one thing, Liam Cohen's background is with Sean McVay and that offense. And obviously did a great job with Baker Mayfield a year ago in Tampa. So you're going to get a lot of motion. You're going to get a lot of reduced splits. You're going to get all those kinds of things that really help a quarterback and define the reads and the throws for him. So this is really, assuming health, really an important year for Trevor Lawrence, because the nature of that offense really presents clean looks for the quarterback. So we'll see. I mean, Brian Thomas was a revelation. He worked out with TJ Houshmandzadeh last summer, and I talked to TJ, and he said, watch out for Brian Thomas. This kid's going to be really, really good, and he was right. And it's funny, when I did him coming out of LSU, I said he'd be an ascending player, and he ascended pretty quick. Then the key, too, is their run game. I mean, they have Travis Etienne. They've got Tank Bigsby. They're two totally different kind of backs. So we'll see how it all works together, because the run game's obviously important in a Liam Cohen, offense. Look what happened a year ago when he had Irving and Rashid White. They ran the ball in Tampa. So, this is going to be a fascinating offense to watch.
They also made some changes on the O-line.
Yes.
They brought in Hainsey to play center. Patrick McCary from Baltimore will play right guard. Then on defense, they've had a bunch of guys putting up numbers. They've got guys that obviously are impressive. Oluokun has a zillion tackles every year.
Yep.
You know what you're getting from Josh Hines-Allen. And Trayvon Walker, Greg, he'll always be compared to Aiden Hutchinson, right or wrong, because he was drafted ahead of him. But Trayvon Walker is actually playing pretty decent. He's not maybe the number 1 overall pick type player, but he's a good player.
Yeah, and they've also brought in some guys that are solid players, like Dwayne Smoot, like Emmanuel Ogbah. Dennis Gardeck, who was in Arizona and then got hurt, for a couple of years there, he was clearly Arizona's best pass rusher. And he showed up every time on tape when you watched Arizona. So they brought in some guys that I think can give them meaningful snaps. The back end will be interesting at the corner position, because they did bring in Jordan Lewis to play the slot, which is where Jarian Jones, who's now going into his second year, played last year. So he's now going to play on the outside.
And I know we've talked about this before, but I think we need to say it again. I mean, uncharted territory here for Travis Hunter and how much he plays on each side of the ball and how much they put him at corner. Because the way I'm looking at it right now, I mean, he's clearly good enough to start a corner for them.
Yeah,
if they made him a corner.
And again, we don't know the answer to that, but Liam Cohen's offense, assuming he's a wide receiver first, which apparently he is, there is a ton of motion. There's a ton of formations. He's got to learn all that. So, I mean, again, he may be that special guy that we've never seen before. I'm not going to sit here and say he can't do it, but there's so much detail in that offense that he has to learn. He can't sit in 2 meetings at the same time.
That's a good point. What about the Titans, Greg? You saw them during minicamp. You were down there watching them up close and personal, so you got a really good feel for the Tennessee Titans. They also have made a bunch of changes on the O-line, at receiver, and certainly they have the number 1 overall pick, quarterback in Cam Ward.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Cam Ward. I got to meet him. Just the poise, the composure, his manner. Obviously, they addressed their O-line, which had to be addressed. It was arguably the worst in football for 2 or 3 years. They have a workmanlike professional left tackle in Dan Moore. They brought in Kevin Zeitler, who was still good in Detroit a year ago. He'll play right guard. Cushenberry's back at center. They're moving J.C. Latham back to his normal position at right tackle. They'll be better. And I think Ward will be good. And I think how the wide receiver position maps out will be fascinating for Tennessee fans. Maybe it's not a big national story, but obviously, Calvin Ridley, seeing him in person. Have you ever seen him in person, Ross?
Yes.
He is so smooth and fluid. It's ridiculous. I mean, obviously, I'm watching him in shorts and a T-shirt, but just the way he moves. And they drafted 2 rookies in DK and Ayamanor, and they're going to make the team, obviously. So the wide receiver position, that'll be interesting how it plays out. They'll be better. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to be 13-4. They're not, but they'll be better.
It's funny because when you watch Calvin Ridley or you talk to people about Calvin Ridley, he's a tough cover.
Yeah,
and
really tough cover.
He might not always put up the numbers, but people they'll raise their eyebrows. They're like, dude, have you seen Cal? He can run routes.
He sure can, and he just, I mean, that's when you realize you sit there, and again, I was, 10 feet away from him, just watching him run routes, you just realize how great athletes these guys are. I mean, he is so smooth and such an easy mover. It looks effortless.
Defensively, I love their D tackles.
Yeah.
Tavondre Sweat, who had a really good rookie year. Simmons has been such a good player for so long. Really hurt them, I thought, Greg, that injury to L'Jarius Sneed last year.
Yeah, and
he's a difference-making player.
Yeah, and they've got a couple issues. They've got to figure out who's going to rush the quarterback off the edge. They've got to figure out who's going to play linebacker next to Cody Barton. And the L'Jarius Sneed situation, if he can play, they're solid at corner. If he can't play, corner's a major concern. So, that's the concerns on defense. Now, Denard Wilson, do you know Denard at all?
Yes, I do, from Philly. Yeah.
One thing about Denard is he's a dog himself, as you know, and he is going to be aggressive. He's not going to sit back. And the kid they drafted in the second round, Femi Oladeju from UCLA, who's only a 1-year player as a pass rusher, this guy looks like Tarzan, and he's supposed to be an unbelievable kid. And if this kid can develop quickly, he could end up being the guy that is their edge pass rusher. I'm not going to sit here and say that's going to happen week 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Hey, it may not happen until 2026. I don't know, but he's an impressive kid.
He's like a terrific example, Greg, and I'm not saying this to take a knock at the UCLA coaching staff, but last year I did the opener for UCLA against Hawaii. Schlesinger didn't start, and Oladejo was a off-the-ball inside backer.
Yeah.
It's like
he made the switch, I think, week 3 or 4.
I guess, Greg, kudos to them for at some point figuring it out and having Schlesinger be an off-the-ball backer who was awesome and having Oladejo rush off the edge, and their defense was good. But that game I did, that they didn't have, they hadn't figured that out yet.
Yeah. No, so we'll see. Look, they've got questions, definite questions. But, I'm so anxious to see Ward because there's something about that. I loved his tape, first of all, but then there's something about the kid, and maybe you'll get a chance to do a game or meet him. There's something about the kid that's impressive.
Yeah, I would actually be surprised if I don't do a Titans game this year. Looking forward to that. Listen, anybody, he ran a wing T offense in high school like I did. Anybody that had to go to the FCS, incarnate word. My running joke, Greg, is I never even heard of that college until Cam Ward, which you know how good you are for me to never have heard of a college until you went there?
I only heard of them because I see their basketball scores sometimes, on the ticker.
All right, check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. We are 3/4 of the way through here, Greg. Really looking forward to the NFC West, AFC West over the next couple weeks, and then training camps will be open. It'll be fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ross.
All right, let's dive into the news. But first, I love Labatt. I love all of you. I love what feels like free merch. We're combining all of that. We're combining all of that at once. Buy beer, get gear. At a minimum, please go to rewards.labattusa.com to see their insane merch because it's incredible. I told you a million times, I already got the mini fridge, and I just recently got the cooler backpack, which is awesome. Rewards.labattusa.com. Wow, we only have 2 left. It's going fast with Greg. Speaking of going fast, what is it? Mid-July almost already? We're only a couple weeks away, I think, from the Hall of Fame game. This is, man, once this thing gets rolling, as you guys know, it's like a snowball going downhill. Anyway, great stuff from Greg. Looking forward to hearing him talk about the NFC West, AFC West next couple weeks. Have a terrific weekend, everybody. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. It is by far the best way to tell someone how you feel about them. Can't highly recommend it enough. myfrontpagestory.com. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.